Hello there and welcome to Film Raw here at Bunkazilla UK. It's the place where we digest the latest movie releases across the cinematic spectrum. I am your host Iain Boulton and I am joined as always by my cinematic partner in crime. It is Christian R. Allan.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. Lots of things. There are a lot of movie releases going on at the moment. It's like there's nothing new coming out in cinemas, but there's big tentpole releases, but there's still loads of films still just kind of like popping up all over the place.
There's too many films. I can't watch them all.
Yes.
You need to stop, Hollywood. Stop now.
Well, basically, the independent labels are having fun. They're going, oh yeah, perfect time for us to get our film up because we've got no competition. So yeah, it's like in the coming weeks we'll be I'll be talking about Honest Thief with Liam Neeson, and there's also Pixie as well, which has just come out at UK cinemas. Irish road comedy crime caper, which I like the look of. I think as well the new Sofia Coppola has just arrived on Apple and also in a few select cinemas as well. So you can't say there's no sort of drought of new releases. There are plenty to be going on, and we've got one of the high-profile releases to talk about today. So the Netflix original movie machine is ramping up with bigger releases appearing on the streaming giant. And when you have the talents of screenwriter Aaron Sorkin involved, you surely must be on to a winner. Stick with us. We'll be talking about the trial of the Chicago 7 in a few moments. But first, this. Before we start on our video review, if you want to be notified about brand new videos from Film Raw and the rest of the Bunkazilla UK team, simply hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It will make the Bunkasaurus very happy indeed. So, the latest high-profile Netflix movie sees award-winning screenwriter Aaron Sorkin return to the director's chair with the trial of the Chicago 7, and features a talented ensemble featuring Redmayne, Sacha Baron Cohen, Mark Rylance, Gordon-Levitt, and Jeremy Strong. The film is a dramatisation based on the infamous 1969 trial of 7 defendants charged by the federal government with conspiracy and more, arising from the countercultural protests in Chicago at the 1968 Democratic National Convention. The trial and its defendants would transfix America and spark conversations about mayhem intended to undermine the US government. Aaron Sorkin, very talented screenwriter, Social Network, West Wing, Molly's Game, even the Steve Jobs film, I think Danny Boyle directed as well.
Yes, he did write that.
He has a lot of work based in sort of real life events per se. I think it's kind of say that if you wanted to have a dramatization about a real life event, Aaron Sorkin's the person you kind of go to straight away. So yes, let's talk about Trial of Chicago 7. Off the bat, I'm very happy to say this is a terrific ensemble piece with really good performances by the key players. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much the same, to be honest. I have my reservations about this particular film. I don't think it holds up as well as Sorkin's previous efforts, including The Social Network, which is one of my favourite movies to come up the last 10 years anyway. Yeah. And I do have a problem with I don't feel as though the cast, it's going to sound rather silly because it's an ensemble piece, obviously, but I feel like there are fantastic names attached to this piece and they're all incredibly talented and they all perform perfectly well. Yeah. But I never really get a sense of there's a standout performance in the film. And nothing here I can see really sort of be resonating beyond, like I can't imagine many of these being picked up in the sort of award seasons.
I think if I was to kind of pick out any performance that is memorable for me, it would probably be Frank Langella as Judge Hoffman, because he is, in one sense, and the way the film depicts him, is kind of like he is technically kind of like one of your main villains of the piece, and basically it's the way this film, what the film highlights is how some of these charges made absolutely no sense, especially when
have you never looked into the American judicial system, my friend?
That's a conversation for another time. But you look at certain elements of this trial. I mean, the whole story regarding Bobby Seale's involvement in the trial to begin with is just bonkers. It's bizarre. It doesn't make sense, and legally it shouldn't make sense. But yet, basically, this was a judge that was clearly incompetent, clearly had a sense of motive of what he was doing.
Oh, absolutely. And the real history bears this out as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think Langella stands out because it just shows how frightening the wielding of that power was at the time. And throughout the film, there was always a sense of dread of whatever the defendants proved, it was going to get batted down for a ridiculous reason. You've got moments in this film where the judge decides not to let anyone hear testimony because he thinks it's not important, despite the fact it's incredibly important, because and he's making up sort of decisions and rulings as they go along, and on one side you can go, oh yeah, it's a senile judge, but on the other side it's like, this is a terrifying representation of the legal system. No,
and it was clear. I mean, he does fulfill the role as he's clearly an antagonist, and I was interested just how much truth in this portrayal there was, and so I did a little bit of reading afterwards, and it seems fairly authentic representation of the trial. Yeah,
there are some elements of the film that are slightly fabricated. There is a portion where the US government reveals that they have had informants within the sort of different groups that these characters.
I imagine they were fictionalized, weren't they?
Some of them were true. One's like Jeremy Strong's girlfriend or undercover girlfriend.
Hippie infiltrator.
Yeah, that apparently, according to some of the sort of like the fact checks, did not really happen.
But that was one of my favourite subplots.
Yeah,
I imagine it's trying to capture the genuine bizarreness of the attempt of the state to infiltrate what is effectively a group of pretty harmless individuals, to be honest.
Yeah,
the overreaction of the government in the 1960s to crush the counterculture movement. I mean, it's interesting. We have in this day and age an idea of the 60s being all Woodstock, peace and love, but it really wasn't. It was an incredibly violent time in America's history, and I think the film definitely captures that atmosphere of the time very well. Yeah. I do agree with you. The judge character is by far the most compelling performance in the entire film. I don't think that's a fault of any of the cast. The cast are excellent, and they perform well. But it's just a case of we don't really have much time to focus on any one individual. One of my favourite scenes in the movie is when Sacha Baron Cohen's character, Abby Hoffman, he's almost the complete opposite side of the same coin when it comes to Eddie Redmayne's character, Tom Hayden. Yeah. Tom Hayden being this conservative appearing, respectable side of the Democratic Party, and then the Abby Hoffman character is basically the sort of psychedelic clown figure. And although they clearly have the same motivations, the same goals, the way in which they want to achieve those are so contradictory. And oddly enough, it kind of touched into a lot of problems the left are experiencing today. In especially sort of I don't want to bog this review too much into sort of politics, so it's kind of unavoidable with this kind of film. But it's interesting how a film that's depicting the late 1960s felt very, very, very now.
Yeah.
Very prescient, very it felt more. I mean, and I don't think that's because the film is necessarily aiming to reflect today. I think it's just we're in a similar time in history. I always say that Braveheart isn't a film about the 1200s; it's a film about the 1990s. It tells you more about Scottish independence than it does about what happened during the medieval period. And so I try to take the same attitude with most historical pieces, but there's definitely a lot of crossover between today and the 60s, which came up with as I watched it. Yeah, so going back to my point, the only real standout scene for me was when Tom Hayden and Abby Hoffman basically have a big row about the styles in which they're attempting to bring about a better world and like peace in Vietnam. And it's I don't want to give too much away, obviously, because it's quite emotionally climatic part of the film. But that was the only real moment I felt that these two performers were able to act as opposed to just playing a character, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, but again, I think that's just because of the nature of the beast. This is a lot of history being crammed into this film, and I honestly don't know what I would take out if I were to streamline it a little bit more, make it more focused on one or two characters, because it's not any individual story. It is a collective piece, obviously.
You know what? I think one way that could have worked, or one way, is you either make a longer film, which I wouldn't have had a problem with.
I think it could have been easily 3 hours, and I would have been quite content.
Or it turns into like a big budget mini series, because then you have time to look at these defendants, because you have defendants who are described by I think it's Abby Hoffman. Is basically you've just been drafted in because you're the token innocent people that who will probably not get charged with anything. Lee Reiner and John Friends, I believe that's how it's pronounced. Those characters, yeah. I liked that. That was really interesting. Yeah, it's like, do you know why you're here? It's like, no, we just went to one or two rallies. We we weren't in charge of anything. See, you're the sympathetic people. Yeah, if the jury let you go, they won't feel so bad as convicting us, even though we've clearly done nothing wrong. Because it makes a point. I mean, this was clearly a show trial. Yeah. And the film goes with it. I mean, it's almost like they're being tried in the Soviet Union. It's genuinely terrifying, as you say, the judge character personifying this really scary incident in American history, because whether or not you agree with them or not, because I don't think people today appreciate just how much support the Vietnam War actually had at the time. I think there's been a strange revisionist form of history over the last 50 years, played in part by Hollywood, where you think everyone in the States was vehemently against the conflict. But that's not true, actually. It was quite split down the middle. There were many millions of Americans who were very pro-war, even in the aftermath, towards the end of the conflict. So, I mean, the story is a very complicated one. I think the film does a very admirable job in portraying this. But I think you're right. It just feels a little bit too... It's strange to say a movie that's 2 hours and 10 minutes long is rushed, but it does feel rushed at times. I mean, one of the things is I like the fact they go straight in. It's like you have like the slight start before the trial begins. It's basically Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character being told, "We want this trial to go ahead. We want." And I love those. Those some of my favourite moments of the film was the sort of the how can I describe it? Just the dickery between these. Government officials. What's it called? The Attorney General. The two attorneys. The previous Democrat, played by Michael Keaton. Nice little. I love it when Michael Keaton just pops into a. It's like, oh, hello, Batman. How are you today? It's like, I'm here for justice. And his Republican counterpart, sort of the one who succeeded him after the election. Yeah. So we're British, by the way. So it's although as much as I find American politics fascinating, I'm still it's a lot of this story is just generally quite new to me. Another good thing about the film is, although I don't think the film is great, I think it's very, very good. I really did enjoy it. I think it's definitely worth a watch just for the sort of the historical aspect of it, and because it is an important story, and I do think it should be. I'm glad it's out there, especially the sort of the Black Panther aspect as well, sort of the subplot. Because I had no idea about any of this, and I found the way Seale's character was treated just appalling. The whole Bobby Seale storyline is very impactful. Looking up some of these events after the film, watching the film, these events, especially for Bobby, where he is bound in court, refused counsel, despite the fact his counsel is not available due to legitimate medical reasons. And a heart attack, didn't he? Yeah, gallbladder surgery. Okay. Oh. And it's like surely if this was supposed to be a fair trial of justice, which is all about this, which this legal system is supposed to be championing, why is someone being forced into trial without proper representation or the ability to represent themselves is just shocking. And the fact that this happened is wrong,
isn't it? Absolutely mind-boggling. Yeah. And it's definitely that subplot is the more disturbing. Because obviously his experiences are far more brutal compared to the others. Presumably because of the political nature of the Black Panther movement and the sort of the message the authorities wanted to send. But the brutality. I mean, where this film does work is in its portrayal of police brutality. Again, picking on very prescient film. I mean, it's interesting actually because when I watched this film, my instincts were that this is a very recent commission because it is tapping into so many events that are happening around us over this strange, volatile year. But Sorkin's actually been working on it for 15 years. So I believe Steven Spielberg was quite originally involved with the production back in 2004, 2005. So it just must be a strange coincidence that this is just, I don't know, just captured the mood of the era so well.
This was a DreamWorks film as well, and I think this was destined for cinemas. Well, I think it has also been released in select cinemas, I think, in the UK, at least so it can qualify for the award season.
I will say this, it did feel like a television movie to me at times.
I would be fair. I think you're right in that degree. I think it doesn't really feel like there was an epic cinematic moment, I suppose. I mean, usually the big sort of dramatizations, they would have something. I mean, it's the same with, say, it's a strange comparison to make, but you look at, say, The Queen. The Queen is a TV movie.
Oh yeah. I love The Queen.
Here is an Oscar for it.
Yeah.
But then you look at it's like if we're using Spielberg as a reference, Bridge of Spies, which we talked about many episodes ago, that feels cinematic because Spielberg is presenting it as a cinematic side of things. I guess because Sorkin has history in TV, especially with The West Wing, I guess there's certain bits that just doesn't shake that TV aesthetic, I suppose.
Yeah, it does, and it's kind of frustrating because you'd expect the confrontations with the police. When they engage in like horrific acts of police brutality, really despicable actions. It just doesn't. It didn't feel as impactful to me as a viewer as it could have done if it was presented in a less pedestrian manner. I feel like this. There was a lot of cinematic tools that could have like elevated those moments. It's just. I mean, it was still powerful, but I just think it could have been. It could have been better. It just felt a bit, I don't know, safe is the word? It's an unusual way of describing what is generally quite horrific scenes, but...
Well, the film doesn't shy away from those sort of scenes, obviously in terms of the rioting and as well as obviously the themes of racism as well and stuff like that. The film doesn't shy away from it, but there does seem to be
it feels like a television docudrama.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that one. I really do. I think for me, I would still recommend this film. I think there are certain things that you go straight into the trial at the start of the film, which is great and fine, because then basically you're going into it and you're going to learn as you go along. But it kind of just finishes with, well, we have a period of trial dates, and then we just go straight to the end of the trial. And it's like, there we go, that's it. It's like, I think it'd be more impactful if you went through the whole journey of the court case. Yeah, that's just me, because I guess there's an intention of the filmmakers to make it abundantly clear what is ultimately going to happen, unless you don't know the true life, the story beforehand. You kind of sense you were kind of still trying to figure out where this was going, and then you just jump forward to the end of the trial, and it's like, here we are, it's all over. It's like, really? It feels like it's missing something there.
It does feel like there's possibly a lot of scenes on the cutting room floor, you know. Going back to our earlier point, I think you're right. I think this would have worked a lot better as a 3-4 part miniseries on HBO or something like that. Yeah. I don't think this story really lended itself to a film. Maybe if it was focused on the protests itself, and then like with the trial, as opposed to it being a trial movie with protests, maybe a protest movie with the trial, if that makes sense. Sort of like flipping the narrative around a little bit. I mean, I feel like we're nitpicking a little bit, though.
Yeah, I think
ultimately it's a very good movie, and it's a very important story, and it's very, very of the now, which is quite interesting. See, this is a 50-year-old event being portrayed. I think it's important that these stories are told. I just feel like it could have been done better.
Okay. Well, so in terms of wrapping this up and giving a star rating for this, I think despite those reservations we've had, despite the fact that sometimes it doesn't really necessarily feel cinematic, or there's not enough room for the ensemble to really kind of flex its muscle in key scenes, I'd still say it is worth watching. And I can see this appearing in award season in the future. I don't know if it's going to do well in an award season.
I think it'll be the odd nod.
It'll get the odd nod. I can't see it maintaining a momentum. I mean, a lot of the reviews have been fairly positive for this film, and the most people have given it, and I think it's a rating I would be happy to give this is 4 stars.
I was thinking exactly the same.
Yeah.
And, I think my frustration to this film is the fact that I liked it so much. So it's just
you wanted more. You wanted more. I wanted more trial.
It could have been better. It could have been.
and then Judge Abby, and then Judge Hoffman will turn up and go, no, 2 hours and 5 minutes is enough. Thank you very much.
We think that was the problem. Half the film was redacted before we watched it.
Possibly.
I will say this again. I completely agree. It's like it is a 4-star movie, and I hope we haven't put people off on
I hope not.
criticisms, because it is excellent. It's important, and it is generally quite disturbing. It's disturbing on the level of the police brutality, the governmental officials, and the local level. So there's the Chicago the corruption there, and then you go to the judiciary, and then it basically goes all the way up to Nixon, in effect. Just the level of rot in these institutions that can cause it's generally horrific. And I'm glad this story was made. I'm glad this film was made, I should say. I'm glad it's being told now. It's just just doesn't quite go over the line, does it?
It's like a few elements away from greatness.
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to. And end of the day, Trial of Chicago 7, definitely worth watching. It's still recommended from us. It's just there's something missing.
B+.
But yeah, it's like a B+, a slight A- if we're being generous, but still. With that being said, it is still worth watching, and it's 4 stars from us. So, with a verdict given on the Trial of the Chicago 7, we must say goodbye this time on Film Raw. Thank you very much for joining us. Whether you're watching the show on YouTube or listening via a dedicated podcast platform, make sure you subscribe so you get brand new episodes of the show as soon as we release them. You can also contact the show by emailing us at filmraw@bunkazilla.co.uk. And there's a whole world of monstrous content to explore at bunkazilla.co.uk. You can read engaging articles and check out more terrific podcasts from our talented team. And finally, of course, you can follow us on Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter at Bunkazilla UK. All those links are in the video description below. So until next time, stay safe, enjoy your movies, and I've been Iain Boulton, joined by Christian Allan. A beautiful kiss. Keep it cinematic. Adios.